more so.
I have a satellite dish over in Salt Spring, and nobody can sit in the same room as me in that satellite dish because I just go from channel to channel, scores and scores of them. And every second channel I finish up with cable shopping. Buy this wonderful, gorgeous, solid gold diamond, solid gold ring. You know, it's worth $3,855, and you can have it for $9.95 today if you phone in your Visa number. There's a reason to my hysteria. I have Ken Fowler, who's the Vice President of Shaw Cable here, and I have His Eminent Worship Frank Nave from Nanaimo here. And I just wanted to have you in to vent my spleen to say that what I've seen on American cable shopping is just awful. Why did you get into this business?
Some people don't like game shows, Jack, but I wouldn't ask them to come off the air. Some people like teleshopping.
How widespread is the evil of teleshopping in British Columbia?
I would guess there's probably 20 cable systems carrying it now, and eventually I would think they'll all have some version of cable shopping.
Must be at least 10,000 people watching.
Sure, at any time, yeah.
No, I'm pulling your leg. How many do you think are watching?
We call it recreational shopping, Jack. No one is going to watch it all the time. It's like, would you read the classified ads page by page by page? It's a flipping channel.
It depends what I'm looking for.
Right.
Now, as a consumer, however, I must heap scorn on you because when you buy from a cable system, you don't know what you're buying, do you?
There's a 100% guaranteed return within 30 days.
Who guarantees it? You or the cable shopping company?
We are a carrier, just like you're a carrier for advertisers in BCTV. So. The cable shopping network, which is the supplier, guarantees it, and they've been in business in the States for 2 years. They've established a record. In the States, this is the same type of a service. The average buyer buys 15 items in a year. So if you're not supplying good service, if they're not happy, why would you buy 15 times?
Well, I may be slightly off my rocker a little bit and indulge in unwise impulse buying like all these people who rush around to buy all these lottery tickets. Mr. Ney, what do you think of cable shopping in a hard-hit area like Nanaimo, where your retail stores and all your shopping centres are having a tough enough time as it is?
Well, it's only been in Nanaimo about 10 days now, but it's serious and it's totally new. And I'm just a messenger boy here today from the merchants of Nanaimo who've come to City Hall and said they're most concerned of the effect this may have on retail shopping in Nanaimo. And we've sent letters off to the CRTC and the Public Utilities Commission in both levels, provincial and federal government, asking them to put a freeze on this until they have an impact study.
Now, the provincial government does have some say. Does the provincial government have any say in the licensing of cable signals in the province?
No.
McGeer used to think he had, didn't he? What happened to that?
Well, a couple of things. There is an order in council which the provincial government passed, which no cable company has, that I know, has complied with.
I mean, you're ignoring the orders of the government too.
As far as we know, it doesn't cover us. We're federally licensed, just as you are in BCTV.
What does the order in council say?
It says that you must apply for a provincial license, and no cable company did, and nothing's happened since.
Well, I know that, the provincial government are concerned just how much power they have to work on this as well. But you know, I don't think it's a thing you can take very lightly. They're selling 25,000 items, but the Wall Street Journal says that this could be the beginning of a retail revolution. And these companies down in the States right now, they're merging. At the Wall Street Journal, they pointed out that the one stock went on the market at $3, and within 4 days it gone to 38. And the other major company, it started off at $18 a stock. It went up to $39 in 5 days, and 6 weeks later it was $120. So the stock market is saying this thing has a great potential, and they're talking about taking 10 to 15% of the market
Frank,
in the next few years.
Let's put this into context, because that 10 to 15% figure, if you sat down for 5 minutes, boggles the mind. The experience in the States has been running for 2 years, okay? If you take that experience and put it into the Nanaimo market, about only 8 or 9% of the viewers buy anything to start with. As you say, Jack, it's not for everybody. So
no, you can't feel the item, you can't look at it, you can't bounce on the table.
Did you buy a car or a suit? All right. The figures in the States, if you relate them to Nanaimo, say that if we had the same experience in the States, you'd probably have between $200,000 and $600,000 worth of merchandise purchased in a year. And that may sound like a lot, but the retail trade in Nanaimo last year was $230 to $260 million. That, if it does as well in the States, it's 0.1% of the retail trade. What's all the fuss about it?
All right, well, now Combe, they're down there. They've merged down there in Florida. They're building a warehouse with 260,000 square feet at $25 million with a potential for 4,000 salesmen. And they...
but this is for the American
For
market.
110 million people,
But
Frank.
they started off just a year or two ago. They had 400 million in sales this year, and they're predicting 1 billion to 2 billion next year. It's
But if you
catching on.
Yeah, but that's for the whole of the United States. There's signals. Oh, by the way, people have
40
got
million people they're servicing. Those
40 million.
Yeah.
What about the deregulation? Is one of your points that being in the retail business, these people should have to buy retail licenses?
Okay, let's get down to business here. When the Cablevision came in, and I want to say this, Cablevision in Nanaimo does a great job for the community. And when it came in originally, they weren't allowed to advertise except for community events. It was a community station. It was never, we thought, intended to go into the retail business. But now they have a monopoly channel, and they're getting a commission on the merchandise, and they're competing against our merchants in Nanaimo. Now, if our merchants are, Nanaimo, incidentally, has more shopping space per capita than any city in Canada, and we have fierce competition, and that is why buses come in from all over the province to shop there, because they get real bargains in Nanaimo. But if they lose 10 to 15% of their business, some of them, a man who's selling tomatoes, he won't get hurt. But what about jewelry shops? What about people who sell Chevrolet cars or Pontiacs? And they're going to sell those right from the factory, or refrigerators, name big ticket items, where they...
You see he has some legitimate fears for some retailers, because you're going right into the market, you don't pay a business license of any kind, you've got no connection with the community, money-back guarantee, and Visa. What's Visa now, 18%?
Mm-hmm. But just a couple of things. We're the carrier, like a newspaper carries mail-order advertisements, like you carry mail-order advertisements. Contributing to the, we contributed $70,000 in taxes to Nanaimo last year as Shaw Cable. We spent over $1.5 million in payroll and investments in Nanaimo last year. But get this back into context. This figure of 10% was printed in the newspaper, and it's totally ludicrous. That would be $30 million. Can you imagine $30 million being spent on television in Nanaimo alone?
Well, it'd be $23 million if we take the $230
Now, I had one
million.
lady phone me up. She said, my husband almost divorced me because I was spending so much money with my credit cards. But she said, we passed that a lot. We're doing fine now. But she says, I know what's going to happen with a lot of ladies. They're going to be there all day in their living room with those credit cards and those things being advertised. They're going to blank out the full credit of their credit cards, and they're all going to be in trouble with their husbands.
Right.
A social revolution, too.
This is the problem with retailers. Right now, this is a new thing about in the last 5 or 10 years. It's called remote marketing. The Globe and Mail has a page on mail order marketing. The BCTV carries advertisements that say, phone this 1-800 number, give you a Visa card. It's being done by radio, by television, and by newspapers. Now, and I would bet that the total sales of remote marketing via newspapers and television is probably more than what we'll do in the cable thing.
Okay, now maybe...
Mind you, it is kind of unexpected, because at one time you couldn't do anything but carry community announcements.
Yeah.
Now you're free under deregulation, do what you like.
Right.
In effect.
After a long haul, if the commission finally said,
All right,
look,
we may be overreacting, but and I know at this stage your advertising is kind of a mediocre content, but I always think of the dentist. He puts the needle in, and then suddenly your tooth is out. Now, when you get into real sophisticated advertising, there are some retailers that are very, very vulnerable with this type of advertising. And we depend, 40% of our taxes in Nanaimo come from the retail industrial section. If they get hurt, how are we going to service our city? We need that tax money.
Fair enough, we'll leave that. That's a fairly broad discussion. He pleads not guilty. He's deregulated. He pays $70,000, spends $1.5 million in Nanaimo. But we're talking about the whole area. You express the fears of the smaller towns, which are already not in the best of economic health, and you want to make sure that if somebody's doing retail business, they behave like a real live, on-the-ground retailer.
Well, I remember what happened when they brought in the mail catalog in the little general stores on the prairies. They got badly hurt, and that wasn't a monopoly type of selling, because anyone could put a catalog
And
up.
since then, the catalogs have died, and this new monster catalog live in front of your
That's
eyes
right.
has appeared.
I think we've got, the price vigilance. That's what we need, vigilance.
Eternal vigilance is the price of freedom, competition, and profit. And we'll be back.
the role of freedom.
We'll be back for calls after the break. see you beat Graham Roberts for mayor at Christmas. Good man.
Which man?
Both of you. Anyway, let's go to the calls. This is Ken Fowler, Shaw Cable. On this is His Worshipful Honour, Frank Ney, Mayor of Nanaimo. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. Before I ask my question, I'd like to make one observation, and that is to the Mayor of Nanaimo, Frank Ney. I think your argument with concerning the credit card purchases or the extravagance of purchases by ladies sitting around watching the TV really doesn't hold any water. I think that's a separate issue. Those same women can go down to Eaton's or Woodward's and tally up their whole limit in one afternoon if they were that irresponsible. However, I think my criticism for this particular concept is we live in North Vancouver and we've noticed on Shaw Cable these advertisements, and I think that the products, possibly the quality, is very, very questionable with the prices and the manner in which they sell. I find it's offensive. They go on and on and on and try to sell a $30 bracelet for 15 minutes.
Okay, what do you say to that? Although you're not the Canadian Home Shopping Service, you're Shaw Cable.
But we carry it. It's, as we say, it's not for everybody. It's interesting. We did check this company out. They've been on the air for 2 years in the States. They're affiliated. The Canadian company's affiliated. And the one thing that has been established is the product is good value. If you order it and you don't like it, they include right in the package a return address to where to send it back. That's part of their whole package. 2020.
Jack, would there an alternative be to placate or to soothe the fears of, let's say, the mayor? Why couldn't the merchants of Nanaimo, in conjunction with the cable company, have their own shop by cable?
That doesn't make much sense, does it?
Well, that's another thing. But, this gentleman's worried about the quality of the merchandise. That worries me, too, because if I owned the Cablevision station, and this is only new, and already people are upset, I wouldn't want to come on too strong. I'm a salesman. I would come in very quietly with innocuous type of advertising until everything gets going. And then I would really hit them with new cars, refrigerators, television sets.
They don't sell
everything.
major items, do they?
No.
They're selling tractors down in the States right now.
There's been a lot of experimenting with selling by television, interaction where you can actually order up and punch in a little keypad. Nothing has worked until this came along. And the key is that it's recreational buying. You would never buy a refrigerator or a television, but you might buy a $25
You would if it was a brand name refrigerator at
Yes,
half price.
I agree.
No.
Sure you would.
Yeah, you know what a brand name costs in all the stores, and if they can get it right from the factory and just add a few bucks on and ship it out, look at all the people they cut out.
By the way, you get they don't pay for their time, they just pay you a commission, is that right?
Yes, our contract is 5% of the total sales.
5% of the total. And they pay sales tax in BC?
Yes, they do.
They'll do that on a bulk basis, I
and
presume.
Sears now are talking 800 stores going to go onto the same type of advertising in the States. So it's nothing to feel that it isn't here to really...
You certainly don't need any clerks working and living in the local communities, do you?
Well, that's because the retail sector are one of the biggest employers.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I consider this perhaps a threatened interference with free enterprise. If we're going to restrict what I can or cannot watch, or what I can or am not exposed to in retail selling over television, then I presume we're going to cancel out real estate ads, automobile ads, and just about everything else. Also, I think, of course, they're making a great mountain out of a molehill. Person has a choice to watch this TV advertising or not watch it, the same as we have watching BC TV or not during some of your advertising. I think this is a ridiculous...
Mountain out of a molehill.
Okay, now he may say that, but maybe we are going to have a retail revolution. But the only thing I'm going to say is it's going to change our lifestyle, and cities are going to have to readjust their concepts of how to collect taxes to make a city run.
Well, even shopping centres did that. Shopping centres killed downtown of big metropolitan cities. It's just a development you have to come along.
And I'm the last one to, I have to agree on this, that you can't stop progress. And the world, robots, everything, they're here to stay. Yep. But it's still a concern to a retailer who's got his life. And when the horse and buggy and the Ford Model T came in, I guess we had the same problem. And
my great-grandfather was a carriage maker.
Yes, I know. This is, but it is it's a source of concern.
Go ahead from Seattle, would you believe?
Thank you, Jack. It's very interesting listening to these wonderful Canadian enterprising businessmen, but as a Canadian who lives in the United States and Seattle chooses to live here, I guess it's the same old story. You Canadians are afraid of the competition in the United States. When are you going to get off your butts and start talking about little old ladies doing their shopping and whatnot and get down to being a little competitive? The fact of the matter is that Canadian business is competitive and can be competitive, but until you hackneyed people with the briefcases and the gray suits get out of Canadian politics and you stop your bickering, those of us who are down here in the United States and who wish to have a free enterprise system and a relationship between the United States and America will not happen.
No, of course it
My
won't.
question is simple. Oh, don't interrupt. Now, the question,
Yes, I will.
Simply, the question is, to the gentleman from Nanaimo, when are you, sir, going to start to come into the 20th century with regards to Canadian competitive enterprise?
Well, I've been a free enterpriser all my life, and I've run one of the biggest companies in British Columbia for over, we've been in the Big 50 on the Vancouver Stock Exchange for over 15 years. I believe in free enterprise, and I know you can't stop progress. And I run a very competitive business myself, and 3 days ago, I had someone come in, they wanted me to put a satellite up and start doing real estate by television.
But let me give him a shot. I'm not quite as free enterprise as you are, Frank, or you are, Ken. You, sir, are speaking from a nation in which there are 33 million people not covered by any form of health insurance, where your charity cases are being refused admission if they don't have money up front to get into hospitals. We may be not as bright as you are, but by God, we're more human and more decent to our people.
Jack, it's hackneyed, Jack. I'm a Canadian.
Not
I live in the
hackneyed.
United States, and that's
You've been brainwashed. You
You're
must
making
go now.
excuses,
Nice of you
Jack.
to
We want
call.
to hear positive input from Canadians. There's a lot of good talent up there. People like you, we don't want to hear the negative stuff. Maybe when you start thinking on the positive end of it, and the fact of the matter is that we can become a Canadian enterprising society.
Enough. You've repeated yourself. I'm going to cut you off now.
People like you will
You must
decide
go.
to step aside and let us younger people come back to Canada.
Good idea. Thank you. Not bad, family. Where are we? How are we doing? We are kind of making a mountain out of a molehill. You know,
I don't
Frank.
think we are. I think that...
But, I mean, I wouldn't live in the States for all the money in the world.
Oh, well. That's
Good
a
evening,
different thing,
Jack.
Good evening.
And gentlemen. Well, I think our whole problem starts in Ottawa with the CRCT. They have got to start clamping down on these cable companies. For the simple reason is, in Vancouver here, we have a cable company that's changing our stations all over the damn dial. Eventually, you'll see that every station that we have now, we will have to pay for. And that is going to hurt a lot of people.
You mean on the converters?
Yes,
You got to get a converter.
that's right.
I know they're changing the stations on me all the time, 410, 14, whatnot. I don't know which thing to punch up. I'm going to keep going with this after the break. Frank Ney from the Nanaimo, His Worship, and I've got trouble you and
Ken
him,
Fowler.
Ken Fowler of Shaw Cable. I don't know if we've been making bricks without straw or just creating a storm about nothing. How are things in Nanaimo?
Well,
You're the guy that was worried most of all about this.
Well, Nanaimo, I think, had one of the biggest booms in Western Canada when things were going 3 or 4 years ago. But the bigger the boom, the bigger the drop-off afterwards. That's the law of mathematics, I
Are you
guess.
coming out of it at all yet?
Well, I think we are. We're going to try and make Nanaimo a retirement mecca, and I think we can do it because our housing prices are less than half of Vancouver.
They've got a great cable
And
system.
A person can have a $100,000 home over here. They can sell it, go over to Nanaimo, buy the same home for $50,000 near the ocean, and have $50,000 in the bank. And overnight, they're retired. Their lifestyle changes completely.
Prices are that low.
Yes. Well, mind
They're
you.
pushing it a wee bit.
No,
You haven't got a nice 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom house at $50,000 overlooking the water.
The average price home in Nanaimo is $58,000.
Well, that's not 50.
And here in Vancouver, it's 115.
Yeah, in the range. I was telling Frank at the break, we grew 1,000 subscribers in Nanaimo last year. That's the first time we've had real growth since the early 80s.
Grew. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I rather suspect the mayor from Nanaimo is also a husband, and maybe he thinks his wife isn't bright enough to ignore these things that are flashing up on the screen and use her credit card for these things. But I think it will apply to all impulse buyers. I myself would not buy a product I've seen on these. I've watched it in the States. I've seen the same merchandise on sale in stores I've been to, and found the same prices, if not lower, and I can actually see what I'm getting.
Thank you, ma'am. This woman sends her regards to your wife.
Yeah, well, there was a lady that told me this was one of her fears, but she did admit she had credit carditis, and she was worried about other ladies who have had the same problem. But men have the same problem, too. I'm not a chauvinist.
Thank you. Go ahead, please, from Victoria.
Yes, I believe I'm a businesswoman, and I think there is too much competition in the States than there is in Canada. And you talk so much about the States. I think you should go back to the States and deal with the States about this, because there's so much less competition.
None of us is from the States.
Have a chance out here.
Well, she must be watching a different television station. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Jack. Two questions. One is, I wonder about, like, when you give your credit card number over the phone to purchase, what happens?
Okay, I tried it. We had the service on for 1 hour, and I said, if we're going to supply it to our subscribers, we should try it out. So I phoned down. They were featuring Splash Dance, which is a radio you can use in the shower. Great product. You phone down, rang 7 times, fellow comes on. I said, I want to buy the Splash Dance. He said, fine. He asked for my address, my postal code. I gave him my Visa number.
Did you give him your...
I gave him my Visa number. And one of the precautions that they have is that they have a bank computer, and they will check your postal code and your address against the address on your Visa card. And if they're not the same, the transaction's canceled. So there's that security against, and they will only have one Visa card at one address. They also
For
ask
myself, like...
Yeah, they ask for your birth date and your anniversary date because they're going to send us cards when it comes anniversry time.
I see. And the other guy, Jack, about the guy from the States?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The guy from the States, he should stay down there.
Yeah. I agree with you entirely. No, I don't understand that. If I give my Visa card number, and I'm prepared to pay 18% if I don't pay it up quickly within the due time, he checks my postal code, my address.
Yep.
Well, anybody can know my postal code and my address,
But not your Visa number. No, what it's a protection against is somebody getting a Visa card and ordering something for themselves. If I try to place an order and I have Jack Webster's Visa card and I give my address, they won't do it because they know the computer
and if you
knows
give Jack Webster's address, it'll go to Jack Webster.
Yeah, and you'll get the Splash Dance radio.
And then I'll send the bank my money back.
Get your money
and I'll
back.
lose the use of my money for 14 days and lose $3.26 interest.
Whatever the interest is on
For
$20.
3 days, and for 2 weeks.
Jack, I wanted to say one thing. You know, I'm over here, you know, expressing our concern about it, but, you know, and maybe it's going to come. It's just a question of in what abundance. In Nanaimo, as far as the retail market is concerned, does very well. They have wonderful stores there, very, very competitive.
I thought you were afraid of the competition from cable shopping.
If they're going to take 10 to 15%, I think the merchants are concerned just what type of competition, because they're cutting out so many levels.
But Frank, as a
the
matter of
jobs,
fact,
the taxes, do you pay 7%?
Yeah.
Yep,
They
pay
that,
full
yeah.
tax.
But a lot of things there that are being eliminated. It could be a fierce type of competition.
It should tell you, Frank, that the Canadian home shopping people are appreciative of Nanaimo. This is probably the best advertising they've had in Canada because they don't believe their service is that good. And if the merchants in Nanaimo do, I mean, they're...
Well, it's given me the chance to say today that the competition in Nanaimo is very competitive, and consequently, when people shop there, they get good value for their money.
Oh, enough. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Good.
I think it's a great idea. I walk miles and miles in large shopping malls, and then there's very few clerks. You have to do everything yourself. As a matter of fact, I'd even like to see grocery shopping over cable.
You will do in due course, ma'am. I hate to tell you.
It will help shut-ins. I have to agree there. I mean, people who can't get out, it'd be
Go to television. Go ahead from Victoria, please.
Yes, Mr. Fowler, Mr. Ney, and Jack. I find it really, really appalling that such a service is being offered simply because of the fact that cable companies should spend less time putting a service like that on the air and more time developing better educational and family programming. I'm really appalled at that. Plus, I think it's going to encourage a lackadaisical attitude amongst people in terms of their getting out to the stores to do the shopping.
Thank you.
It's a matter of choice. We currently have 22 channels on Nanaimo.
Fair enough. 22 channels. A matter of a choice. I don't think I would buy anything on a cable shopping thing, would you?
Well, I never get time to watch
That
it
was
that
a great
much.
radio. You should try it. You take it in your
But
shower.
I have watched it, and it's only new. It's only been there about 10 days.
Well, don't forget, you came over here against it, and you've got to leave here against
Well, I'm here.
it. I got to go too. My
Take back
thanks.
one thing.
My thanks to Ken and my thanks to Frank, and I'll be back after the break.